What up, Raffleators? Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back, Raffle Nation. This is the channel for politics, economics, food and fun here in Georgetown, Guyana. And if you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe, like, share this video with friends and family around the world. Now, what I want to address today is a topic that I raised a year ago. In fact, almost 2 years ago now, about the value of the Guyana dollar. Remember, I made a video that said the value of the Guyana dollar will rise after March 1st, 2020. And that was the day for the production of oil. That is the day Guyana would become an oil producing country. Now that day has come and gone almost 2 months ago, right? We're about a month and 24 days since March 1st, 2020, and now is a good time to revisit this question of what about the value of the Guyana dollar rising? Is it on schedule like I predicted 2 years ago? Where is the value of the Guyana dollar? Now since then, the value of the Guyana dollar has actually gone from, at an exchange rate of 207, 208 to 1 to now 213, 214 for $1 US. And so if you're measuring the value of the Guyana dollar against, say, the US dollar, it has actually lost some value since I made that video about a year and a half, 2 years ago. But the question is, what happens now? In my last video I said Guyana is now an oil producing country. We sold our first shipment of oil in February, ahead of schedule, ahead of March 1st, 2020, right? And we got $55 million. And one of the reasons why I made that video about the value of the Guyana dollar rising is because, like I said, the GDP, the gross domestic product of Guyana, was expected to rise rapidly once oil started to be produced. And that is because of the influx of US dollars into the economy. Now, in fact, that money goes into the sovereign wealth fund. So the question is, where are we? What is responsible? How are we going to go? Are my expectations still the same for the value of the Guyana dollar rising? Well, now that we're closer, in fact, we're now in the period after when I said the value of the Guyana dollar will rise, I want to give you much more detail. I want to give you a little more detail about what that means and how it will happen, because I still believe it will happen, but it is contingent upon a number of factors. In fact, I am listing 10 factors that are going to be responsible for the value of the Guyana dollar rising. And I'm going to go through these one at a time very rapidly, because I'm going to be able to address them and come to deal with them again and again over the next several months to years. But the first one, of course, is political stability. So these are the 10 things on which the value of the Guyana dollar depends. In fact, not only the value of the Guyana dollar, but the stability of any currency in the world, the value of money of any country in the world will depend on these 10 factors. And the first one is political stability. Number 2 is GDP growth, right? So because, of course, the value of money in the era of fiat currencies, right? So now it's no longer tied to some gold standard or to some fixed assets, but it is based on what the government says it is. So because the value of money depends on the trustworthiness of the government that backs it, political stability is important for the value of the dollar to be stable and to rise. But GDP growth is also important because it's not tied to the gold standard or to any standard. But if there is growth, that also builds confidence that the money will be backed by currency flow, by capital flow into the economy. The third factor is economic diversity. So not only do we need GDP growth, which we also now have, not only do we need political stability and GDP growth, we also need economic diversity. In other words, we need the economy to be based on so many companies and industries that if any one of them fails, it would not bring down the economy. In other words, we need economic diversity so that people will be employed regardless of how performance, how each individual industry performs, whether it be cyclical in nature or whether it be based on other external factors. If you have economic diversity, if you have so many industries operating in the society, in the country, then the stability and the value of the currency can be assured. Number 4 is the debt to GDP ratio, so the national debt. So right now our debt to GDP ratio is about 50%, and this is way better than most of the developed world, where they achieve their growth by, say, borrowing and spending on investing in infrastructure and industry. We're still not yet at the stage where we have built out infrastructure, but we also don't have the debt that goes with that kind of infrastructure building. But the value of the dollar will depend on us maintaining a stable debt to GDP ratio. In other words, we can't go rapidly into debt if we want to see the value of the Guyana dollar rise. Number 5 is population stability, population health, human resource development, human resource development index, and human resource stability. So we need a stable population, a population that is not migrating, is not fleeing the country. We need a population that is growing, and that is actually beginning to happen now that a lot of immigrants are coming into Guyana from South America, and they're all welcome here because we actually need the population to stabilize and to start growing, because as you know, Guyana has had negative population growth for the past 30 years or so because of migration, people, Guyanese, leaving and going elsewhere. So stable population growth is number 5. In other words, having a significant population. We are still under 1 million people. I think if the value of the currency, our currency, is to rise and to become stable, then our populations need to become more than 1 million, and in fact 2 or 3 million. Once we get into the range of 2 to 3 million people and stable population, we can expect the value of the Guyana dollar to stabilize and to grow. Number 6 is disposable income, or per capita income. In other words, people need to start earning real money. But the two things are tied. In other words, if the value of the Guyana dollar rises, then that is automatically a wage increase, right? It's like giving people a bonus, because now the value of the money they collect, even if it doesn't go up, even if they're not getting salary increases, the value of that money increases. It means that they can spend more, they can buy more, especially in a country where we still import a lot of our products that we don't create, we don't manufacture in Guyana. And if the value of our dollar is stronger, then we have better, stronger buying power. So it depends, the value of the Guyana dollar rising will also depend on per capita income. In other words, the amount of money each Guyanese makes per year, and that of course is tied to GDP growth. Like I said, once we start selling oil and the money starts coming into the economy, even if it goes into our sovereign wealth fund, it actually increases our per capita income. And once that per capita income starts to grow, and in fact it is going to grow this year by about 50%, just based on the fact that we've already sold oil, that will also contribute to the rise in the value of the Guyana dollar. Number 7 is national development or infrastructure. We need infrastructure development to support the efficiency of the economy, to make it easier to do business and easier for economic growth to become synergistic, to grow, economic growth to escalate. Infrastructure, roads and schools, hospitals, airports, all of these things, seaports, hotels, all of these are infrastructure that is necessary, and once these become substantial and significant, they contribute to the value of the Guyana dollar rising. Number 8 is national asset stability. So we need to begin to acquire assets. One of the things I said in the past is that once we've started to spend our global or wealth fund or national wealth fund, we need to start buying assets, right? We need to buy companies, we need to buy real estate all around the world. So we now have assets that are not only based in Guyana, based on the assets we have in the country, but once we start buying companies and we start buying buildings, we could, for example, we can buy the Hancock Tower in Chicago, or we might buy Tesla Motors, a company, right? So if we use our sovereign wealth fund to acquire these assets, this will contribute to asset stability and asset growth, and that also underpins the value and causes the value of the Guyana dollar to rise. Number 9 is peace and military stability. So we need peace with our neighbors. We need to not be in war, not to be involved in war. And once we have peace and we're not involved in conflict, that contributes to the value of the Guyana dollar stabilizing, the value of the Guyana dollar rising. And number 10, the last important factor, is we need a strong dollar policy. So we need our political culture and our leadership to support strengthening the value of the Guyana dollar. We need a strong dollar policy. We need to implement economic policies that would support a strong dollar, a strong value of the Guyana dollar. Now, there are a number of reasons why we should support policies, or we should implement policies that support a strong dollar, not the least of which is the fact that we now can have a more forceful international policy. We can have more forceful international relations. If you have a strong dollar, then you have the ability to influence the world in a way that you couldn't if you have a weak dollar. So all these people who are arguing that, look, we should keep our dollar weak because we want to be able to compete in terms of exports. Yeah, that's one of the advantages of having a weak dollar. But what you're doing is you're actually destroying your own labor force by paying people poor wages just so that you can sell products and you can basically tread water. But if you have a strong dollar, you have the power to influence the world, because now your currency has authority, has control, can create an effect in the world. You can have a more influential foreign policy if you have a strong dollar, right? And you only have to look around the world to see nations with strong dollars, how in fact they impact and influence the world. You cannot influence the world if you have a weak dollar, right? So you need strong dollar policy. So there, guys, those are my 10 reasons or the 10 factors that will support strong dollar, the value of the Guyana dollar rising. So on the issue of whether the value of the Guyana dollar will rise, my answer is yes, the value of the Guyana dollar will rise like I predicted after March 1st, 2020, but it is a lot more detailed than just something that will happen passively. It will depend on these 10 things, not the least of which is a strong dollar policy. So number 1, we need political stability, we need GDP growth, we need economic diversity, we need a small debt to GDP ratio or manageable debt to GDP ratio. We need population stability and population growth. We need a significant and sizable population. Number 6, we need increased per capita income. In other words, people need to make more money. Number 7 is we need national development and infrastructure development. We need number 8, asset stability. We need to begin to acquire assets around the world using our sovereign wealth fund. Number 10 is Number 9 is we need military stability. We need peace with our neighbors and with our the international community. And number 10 is we need a strong dollar policy. So those are my thoughts, guys, on what will happen to the value of Guyana dollar. I think the value of Guyana dollar will rise. Tell me what you think, given now that Guyana is an oil-producing country and generating significant wealth, and in fact that is beginning to have an impact. In fact, because we have sovereign wealth fund, we're now able to borrow money for example, to deal with this current global pandemic. Recently, the Guyana government was able to acquire $100 million from the United States based on the fact that we have a significant account at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. So this is one of the initial impacts of becoming an oil-producing country, and I think once we implement these things, once we start focusing on these 10 policies, these 10 things, then we can see the value of the Guyana dollar rising. In the comments below, tell me what you think about the value of Guyana dollar rising, whether you think it's a good idea, whether you support the strong value of the Guyana dollar, and then tell me what you think about the time frame, the time scale, because that's the next thing. How soon can we expect this to happen, and at what rate, and how far will it go? In other words, will we become equivalent to the US dollar like I predicted eventually over a 10-year period, or based on the fact that we can't even manage to have political stability, you know, will we be able to achieve even half of that? In other words, 2 to 1 like we used to be in the 1970s and before the 1980s, when the value of the Guyana dollar collapsed because of various devaluations. So guys, want to see more content like this? Click like and subscribe. Remember, you can share this video with friends and family around the world. Let them know what's happening in Georgetown, Guyana. Later!